Okay, so we took a look at some of the things that you could do with group by, but again, because of some of the things that were already hinted at, that the original values are gone. You don't have access to the original values. You only have access to the aggregates of those values, and because of that, there are things that limit what you can do with group by. All right, so let's talk about these. Right. One of the things that you need to do is understand how group bys are calculated. Right. So first the group by are calculated after the where clause. Right. Remember, you have a select from where. Right. So here you have all the records. You have 1,000 records in your original table. You might have 1,000 records here in A. So you have 1,000 records here. And when you pass it through the where, you filter out and say, you only are left over with only 100 records, right? You only left over with 100. So only those records that meet the criteria, right? So so this is after the where, right? So I've done the where, and now I have the records that match my criteria. But then now we run the group by. Now we run the group by. Now we run the group by. So group by. So now this calculates the groups, right, and says that these are the groups, maybe 3 groups. Right? So maybe this is 33 records, and 34 records, right, in the groups. So you only have 3 groups, meaning just 3 records came out, only 3 records in the output, and this one single result aggregates 33 of the 100. Okay. Once you've done this, now you can do the select. So in the select, in here, you might have had, I don't know, you might have had 10 columns, of which you only really care maybe of only 4 columns. And say, I don't want all the columns. I only want 4 of the columns. Yes. Now which columns are here though? These are 10 columns. A might have had 20 columns. Now what can I put here? What can I put here? I can only put here columns, right? This is grouped by, say, you're grouping by A, right? Well, A I can put in there. A can be in there. And I might have other fields in there, right? I might have B, C, D, right? I can only put here things that are aggregates. So aggregates. So these would be aggregates of B, C, and D. So these would be only aggregates of B, C, and D. I can't put actual values of B because there's 33 values that are contributing to that one aggregate, right? So I don't have the original 33 values. They're gone, right? They were used to calculate the aggregate, right? I don't have them anymore, right? So you can't have, so I don't have in the where clause, in this where, I haven't grouped them yet. Yes, right? First the where clause runs, and then I group, calculating the aggregates. So the values of those aggregates don't happen until after the group by. Yes, the where already happened. So these values of aggregation, I can't use them in the where clause. I can't say where the average is equal to 32. I can't put an aggregate in the where clause because I haven't grouped yet. That makes sense? All right, so you cannot put aggregates in the where clause. Can't put aggregate in the where clause because we haven't grouped yet. So only non-computer fields in the select statement, because all the fields are removed. So let's look at an example of looking at grades. Say you have in Q3, right? You're saying calculate for me from the section, right, whose grade is an A. So I'm looking at the enrollment table, right? In the enrollment table, I have a section and I have the grade of a student, right? So we have in the enrollment table. Actually, I think I have. Do I have this? I do actually. Never mind. So I have this table, the enrollment table, right? And I have the enrollment ID, I have the student ID, I have the section ID, and I have the grades, right? So in section 1, I have 4 students. In section 2, I have 4 students. In section 3, I have 4 students. Yes, and 2 students in section 1 got A, and 2 students in section 1 got B's. Now in section 2, I have 3 students who got A's, right, and 1 student got a B. Whereas in section 3, only 1 got an A, and the other 3 got B's, C's, and D's. Make sense? And the question is, which section got the highest number of A's? That's the question. How many? Which section got the highest number of A's? So how can we calculate that? Well, we could do the following, right? We can say, take the enrollment table, right? This enrollment table, group by the section ID, meaning I'm going to have 3 groups, right? The group of for section 1, 1 group of section 2, and 1 group of section 3. Yes? And then, as you calculate those 3 groups, only consider where their grades are A's, right? So in the group, as you're calculating the group, don't consider the students with B's, don't consider the students with C's or D's, right? So when you're calculating the group for section 1, only consider the 2 records with A's. For a group for section 2, only consider those 3 records with those A's, the 3 students. And for the last one, only consider that record for 1 with 1 A. Make sense? Right? So as you go through that, right? So we're filtering an A group by section ID, and then the result is going to give me the section ID and the count, how many A's there are, right? And the result is, do I have it here? Yeah, so the result is this, right? You have the section 1 got 2, section 2 got 3, and section 3 got 1. All right. Now the result of that is I'm putting in 83. See that, either with a view or with a nested query, either one, or an inline view, however you want it. I'm then using. Notice that I'm doing an aggregate on the number of A's. I'm doing the aggregate on the number of A's, right? But I don't have a group by. See that? I don't have a group by. That means that I am treating the entire set as if it were one big group. Yes? Right? And what am I doing here? I'm doing the max number of A's. So out of the num A's, right, I'm extracting the 3 and I get the max A's, 3. There we go. So we've calculated that 3 is the max number of A's that any section has received, right? Unfortunately, notice that when we went from 83 to 84, right, we would have wanted to also have right here the section ID. Right? It would have been nice to have here section ID 2, and the maximum is 3. And that's the answer, right? Section 2 got the highest one. But in the group, remember here, I can only put things that are aggregates. I cannot put fields. I cannot put fields that are not aggregates. So I could not put it. It would be invalid for me to say select section ID, comma, max number of A's, because section ID is not. I'm not grouping by section ID, right? And by the time I treat this as a single group, what do I do with 1, 2, and 3? I can't do an aggregate. I can't add them up. I can't average them, right? So it's invalid to put the section ID over here, right? So that's one of the limitations. We would hope that you could just add that over there, but you can't. Obviously, there is a. So here's a couple of right, exactly. This is one of the things that we cannot do, right? It would be ideal. I could just say q.section ID. It's illegal because by the time the aggregates execute, by the time I calculate all my aggregates, I don't have the section ID anymore. It's gone, right? They're all discarded. I can only aggregate them. Or I would have wanted to do something like this. Give me the section ID where the average, where the maximum number of A's, right, is equal to the number of A's. Again, I can't do this because the where clause executes first and then the group. So I haven't done the aggregate yet because I haven't identified the records that I need to aggregate. Make sense? Right? So the groups don't exist yet, so I cannot aggregate yet. So I can't use this value because I haven't identified the records that I'm going to aggregate. Right? The where clause tells me the records that I want to aggregate. So it's like a chicken and egg, right? I can't do the aggregates because I haven't identified the records, and I can't identify the records because I haven't identified the averages, the aggregates, right? So it's illegal. I can't do that either, right? Obviously, there's a workaround. It's kind of like a hack, where you have this three, and you can join these two. You know, you can join the results from Q84 with Q83 and say, well, now return me the section ID whose num A's is equal to the max A. We could do that, right? But in that case, obviously, you know, if you have more than one section with the same number of A's, then it would tell you all the sections that have that maximum, which is fine. Right? So you can join this, you know, where number of A's is equal to the max A's, and then it tells you which section you're talking about, right? Right. So we have limitations there, of not being able to use aggregates on the where clause, right? But there's hope. The hope is that this became such a useful feature, right? Of saying, hey, I'd like to be able to do aggregates on the where clause. That'd be great, right? Well, having allows you to do just that, right? Allows you to have these aggregates on the where clause, where you can say having, you can do the group by, then you can do having and then the aggregate function on the column and then the operator where it's equal to, less than, or whatever, right? So having allows you to get around this limitation of group by, right? Where you can now have aggregates on the where clause. You can say, well, in the having clause, right? You know, where you can do that aggregation on a field, and this identifies the records that right, like in the where, you can say, well, add them up, you know, not having run the where clause, right? And the ones that are less than 2,000, then grab that particular subset of records, okay? Or a price is greater than 1,500, right? And so this allows you to get around the limitations of group by.